Today I'm going to be doing a review and comparison of 5 on-camera microphones from the perspective of handheld shooting. When you shoot with a tripod or a gimbal, some of the considerations that you have for a microphone kind of become moot points, and I will talk about those a bit later. Right now I'm using the Rode NTG3 as sort of a control just for sound quality. But let's start with the Rode Videomic Pro Plus. This is the microphone that I have the most experience with. I have been using it for the last 5 years. It costs $300. The shock mount is excellent and is probably indestructible from everything we've put it through. It has a great removable rechargeable battery that recharges with micro USB. You can also use regular AA batteries if that battery ever runs out. But this battery lasts for so long that my buddy Andrew didn't even know that this microphone ran on batteries for a very long time. It has a port for your audio cable, so you can use whatever audio cable you want. That's a huge plus. But the problem is that the audio cable sticks out the back of the microphone. So if you want to use the viewfinder on your camera, it presses right up against your head and you can't get your eye all the way to the eyepiece without like kind of noodling your face around it. A great feature that every mic needs to have nowadays is to be able to turn on automatically when I turn the camera on. This is the first microphone I had that feature. And once you have this feature, it's really pretty much impossible to go back to anything else. The wind filter on this microphone is by far the best of all the microphones I'm going to compare today, mainly because it's its own solid piece that very easily slips onto the microphone. Typically on-camera microphones have these wind filters that are almost like socks that you just have to kind of like squeeze onto the microphone. It's never a very good experience. Not that it's that big of a hassle, but compared to this nice filter that just slides on very easily, I really wish they were all like this. The microphone also has a built-in low cut filter that you can use if wind is really strong. And one time we were on a mountain and we had this wind filter, but combined with the wind cut, you could barely hear the wind.
I've only felt wind this intense one other time, and that was on the Timberline Trail. There was a section very similar to this, extremely intense.
I'm pretty sure I just saw some rocks moving in the wind. I think the only other place I saw that was at Horseshoe Bend.
When it comes to sound quality, I feel like the sound in this microphone is slightly muddled a little bit. That's kind of the Rode sound like you might have heard earlier with the Rode NTG3, but even more so, I feel like this mic could really benefit from a little bit of EQ. I typically don't mess with that, but this does have a high boost where it takes the high frequencies and boosts them slightly. I generally leave that on because I think it sounds a little bit better. Now, this room is terrible for sound quality because it's nothing but reflective surfaces. There's nothing to dampen the sound, but that might actually be helpful because when you're using these microphones, 90% of the time, you're not going to be in a controlled environment where you can actually know what the sound is going to be. So this is kind of giving you an idea of a worst case scenario. If we go outside, immediately the sound quality becomes a lot better. These shotgun microphones, they just sound really good when you're outside. Especially this microphone, it has such good wind filtering that you get none of the wind noise. You just get the actual audio. And the shock mount is so good that for these type of handheld shots, it's just so trustworthy. So when it comes to handling noise from moving the camera around or stomping around, you're not gonna hear that in the microphone. Now this is a directional shotgun microphone, which means that the direction it's pointing at is gonna sound much better than any of the other directions. When I'm shooting handheld, obviously that's no problem because I'm looking at the microphone and it sounds good. But lots of times I'll point the camera at something and I'm talking behind the microphone. Now, obviously that doesn't sound as good, but this is what it would sound like if you're talking from behind the microphone. Now, this microphone has been absolutely rock solid. I have very few complaints with it. But the only reason I even decided to try out another microphone is because it is so big. When I'm out doing run and gun filming, I have the camera attached to my hip. And having this big, bulky microphone sticking out from the camera, it's not so much that it's a physical problem getting around and bumping into things, but it's more so that it makes you more conspicuous. When I'm out run and gun filming, I want to be as inconspicuous as possible. Not so much because I'm going to get in trouble for filming in places I shouldn't be filming, but just I'm much more natural with the camera if I don't feel like people are looking at what I'm doing. And a big microphone on a big camera is a surefire way to get so many people looking at what you're doing. So keeping that in mind, That is why I decided to try out the Deity V-Mic D4 Duo. This microphone has a couple of things going for it. First of all, it's only $50, so it is by far the cheapest of all these microphones, and probably shouldn't even be compared to these other microphones, but I have it, so I'll go ahead and do that anyway. It is also the smallest, although the size is somewhat negated when you have to put on these two gigantic wind filters.
But I think the bigger problem is that the shock mount is just too flimsy. Like, I can just see that microphone just flipping all over the place. In my experience, quite a bit of wind noise and handling noise just comes through at weird times.
This is the type of experience that I had with this microphone, which just, there wasn't that much wind, but for some reason it just cut right through the wind filter. Let's listen again.
In my experience, quite a bit of wind noise and handling noise just comes through at weird times, even when you think that it shouldn't be. But the actual initial reason that I bought this microphone, besides the size, is that it's actually two microphones in one. A microphone pointing forward and a microphone pointing backwards.
So right now I'm behind the camera and the microphone in the front is the only one that's on. But if I hit a little switch. And I should also note that you have to pull back the wind filters to flip this switch, and you will not be using this microphone without the wind filters or you'll be having a very bad time.
Now it records the rear microphone on the right channel of audio and the front microphone on the left channel of audio. So that way, in post, you can just decide which one you want to use and just make it on both tracks. Obviously, this is great for run and gun filming because then you're always filming the front and the back microphone. So if you want to quickly turn the camera around, like this, you can easily talk to the camera and then easily switch it back and then just talk about what you're looking at and then have both mics with really good quality.
And like the Rode Videomic Pro Plus, you're gonna be having the same problem when you try to use the camera's viewfinder with the microphone bumping into your forehead. Now, as far as sound quality goes, it's not bad. It's about what I'd expect for a $50 microphone that doesn't require a battery. It is definitely an improvement over the onboard microphone on your camera. But the excessive wind noise and the weak shock mount just made it so that I never felt very comfortable actually using it, and I felt like I was getting so much noise from the mic rattling around, and I didn't end up using this mic very much, even though I've had it for quite a while. But speaking of bad shock mounts brings me to the next microphones, the ECM-B10 and ECM-B1M. Because these microphones are so similar, I'm gonna kind of talk about them in tandem. Now, right off the bat, what's great about these microphones is that they connect through the digital hot shoe. So you don't actually need an audio cable plugged into your camera, and you don't need a battery because it's powered by the camera itself. You just plug this into your hot shoe, you tighten it down, and then that's all you need. One big caveat though, this only works with certain Sony mirrorless cameras. So if you don't have one of those cameras, don't even consider this microphone, you can't use it. The size of these things is also really fantastic, especially this ECM-B10. Look how small this thing is. It's a little bit taller than I would like, and the height probably matters more than the length of the microphone. Now, you can adjust the audio manually with this little dial here, or you can just set it to auto. I do it manually because the auto levels I've found to be a little bit too loud. Also, it seems to just sort of take the audio and clip it at -3 dB no matter what happens. We have now switched it to auto. I'm at the same distance talking the same volume. But I can even see on the meters right now, I'm just talking at a normal volume and we're hitting -3 dB, like the ceiling. So if I talk really loud like this, the sound quality of this mic is fantastic. This has 3 different pickup patterns: super cardioid, cardioid, and omnidirectional. Now, typically I would just leave this on super cardioid because I'm just talking to the camera. But what's great about this is that, like the V-Mic D4 Duo, if I'm behind the camera, and currently this microphone is set to super cardioid, so you can probably barely hear me with this pickup pattern. But if I switch it to omnidirectional, then I sound like this. It sounds fantastic. And in fact, I could walk around the camera, and as I'm walking around the camera, it's gonna sound pretty much just as good no matter where I am. So that makes it extremely flexible. So first off, let's put on this little wind filter, because if you do not have this wind filter on, you will get wind noise just from moving the camera around. Did you hear that? You have to have this wind filter on here. But with the wind filter on, that's much better. The problem is the handling noise. This right here is the shock mount. And you can even see right now that the shock mount is hitting the side of the microphone. Now, when I was initially researching this microphone online, I had really hoped that the handling noise was an issue that was overblown, but in my experience, it's not. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the video. If this mic were on a gimbal or on a tripod, I would not be nearly as concerned about the shock mount. But if you're gonna be doing run and gun handheld filming on this thing, you need a shock mount that is really reliable, and it has to be reliable in a lot of conditions, not just the ideal conditions. So right now I'm just walking handheld, and hopefully you can't hear the shock mount. It's probably not a big deal. But if I'm moving around and like maybe I have to run for some reason, or I have to flip the camera around and do this or that, I can just see this thing just flopping all over the place. Now prepare yourself if you're wearing headphones, but obviously you're not going to be shaking it around like this. But there will be times where you'll be handling the camera and you won't have time to be nice and smooth and gentle with the camera. You're going to be flopping it around. You're going to be moving around. You're going to be flipping it here and there. Now, as you just heard, that was not great. Of course, if you're filming on a tripod or if you're filming on a gimbal, it is much less of a concern. And this could be a very good microphone for you if you're going to be filming on a tripod. But for that handheld run and gun style, I don't know if that's going to work. Not only that, but the wind filter was not very good. This does have a low cut filter on here that you can use to try and cut out some of the wind noise. But ideally, you want to be able to get most of the wind out from the wind filter itself, and it didn't work that great. This also has a noise cut filter that's supposed to filter out background conversations. I haven't tested that yet, so I can't speak to it. I could see it being useful if you were in a really crowded place and you were trying to talk to the camera, but the noise from the shock mount kind of precludes me from keeping this microphone long enough to actually test it out. Now, the ECM-B10 is a smaller, cheaper version of this same microphone that has less microphones up here. So apparently it's just less beam forming and less directional. It is $100 cheaper at $250. Let's switch it over now. So when it comes to sound quality, the ECM-B10 I think sounds just as good as the ECM-B1M. This is on the super cardioid pickup pattern also. It sounds fantastic. It's even smaller. Now these both have the same shock mounts, but the ECM-B10 is slightly smaller. So the hope is that when you're walking around, it's gonna be slightly less prone to be flopping around in that crappy shock mount. But I would say that in the amount of time that I've spent using these two mics, I wouldn't say that it's a appreciable difference, or at least a huge difference. Maybe it makes a slight difference. I think the shock mounts are exactly the same, so it's just a matter of the size of the microphone itself. Now prepare your ears once again if you're on headphones, because I'm gonna shake the camera. Same shock mount issues. Obviously, you're not going to be shaking your hands like that, but you will be doing things like moving around quickly, flipping the camera around, and like even adjusting settings, you know, doing all sorts of stuff. Now, I don't know if I emphasized this enough at the beginning of the video, but I'm looking at all of these microphones from the point of handheld filming. These Sony microphones are fantastic and would be so great for handheld filming if not for the handling noise and the kind of crappy wind filters. So finally, that brings me to the last microphone of the bunch, the Sennheiser MKE 400. Now, right off the bat, of these 5 microphones that I'm looking at today, this is my favorite as far as sound quality goes. Now, apparently, this is like the classic Sennheiser sound, which is where they take the high end and they kind of boost it. I personally like that sound, and I also think it works pretty well with my voice, but that's a pretty individual thing, and also, a lot of people say that you can just change that with EQ and post. As I said earlier, I don't really mess with that too much, so I kind of want the microphone to sound the way I want it to sound right into the camera. The second thing that this mic has going for it is that it is the perfect size and form factor. For one thing, the cable comes out of the front of the microphone, so if I want to press my eye against the viewfinder, no problem. Second is the size. It's the same sort of length as the other microphones, but as I said, it doesn't jut out too far from my body because it's not tall. Now, the wind filter, unfortunately, is another one of these socks, but the microphone itself is actually already inside of this blimp, so technically you don't always need this extra wind sock. And as you can see, it's kind of hard to put it on, but you probably wouldn't be doing it that often anyway. Now, when I realized how small this microphone was and how much I liked the sound quality, I was really hoping that the handling noise would be good and that there wouldn't be some like gotcha. And now the handling noise, I can very happily say, is pretty much non-existent. It's basically like the Rode Videomic Pro Plus. You can shake it around, you can move it around, you can do whatever you want. The shock mount, I think, is actually inside the microphone blimp, and if you shine a light, you can kind of see it in there. Handling noise, very well controlled. Wind blocking, also very well controlled. If you talk behind the microphone, it sounds like this. So you don't get the advantage that the Sony cameras had where you could do omnidirectional, but you get roughly the same type of performance that you do with the Rode Videomic Pro Plus talking behind the camera. The Achilles heel of this microphone is the battery situation. It uses 2 standard AAA batteries. The Rode Videomic Pro Plus, as I mentioned earlier, can use 2 AA batteries, but it has a removable rechargeable battery that can be charged directly from the microphone. That is the big deal. Even if the battery life in this microphone from the 2 AAAs lasts a very long time, it can't beat the fact that this microphone can actually be recharged out in the field just with a USB cable. If you had rechargeable AAA batteries, you couldn't recharge it just with a cable. You would also need a AAA battery charger. Now, of all these mics that we tested so far today, I want to stick with the Rode Videomic Pro Plus, but when it comes to run and gun filming, it's too big. And I specifically started looking for a new mic because I wanted something smaller. I like the sound of the Sennheiser microphone over the Rode Videomic. So far, the only weakness of this microphone for me is the fact that you can't recharge the batteries directly with a USB cable plugged into the microphone. This microphone is $200, and just to recap, ECM-B1M, $350. Rode Videomic Pro Plus, $300. ECM-B10, $250. Sennheiser MKE 400, $200. Deity V-Mic D4 Duo, $50. So hopefully after watching this whole video, you'll be able to take what I look for in a microphone and then see what you look for in a microphone and then take what you need from there. To recap, the Rode Videomic Pro Plus is a rock solid microphone. You cannot go wrong with this thing. It's a little bit big. It's indestructible. It has a rechargeable battery. You can use AA batteries. It has a great wind filter. It turns on automatically. It sounds great. It is an excellent choice. The Deity V-Mic D4 Duo is a good choice if you're on a budget and you also want to be able to talk behind the microphone. The wind filter and shock mount are not great, and you're going to have to get used to that. There might be better options on the market than this, but at $50, it does sound very good, and the fact that it has 2 microphones in one is very helpful. The Sony ECM-B1M and ECM-B10 are both excellent microphones, but are just kind of killed by the fact that they have so much handling noise and wind noise. As a Sony camera user, these microphones could be so great. If they redesign these with a good shock mount, I would be so happy with them. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that you have to power it through the hot shoe, so they're limited by what designs they can do. But man, these are so close and so far. Finally, the Sennheiser MKE 400. I don't have the same amount of experience with it as I do the Rode Videomic Pro Plus, but what I have used of it so far seems like it has so much potential. It seems like a very excellent mic, and it's more affordable than a lot of the other options. In conclusion, I'm going to be using these 2 microphones. I have used this one for 5 years, so I know the ins and outs of it. The Sennheiser I've not used for nearly as long, so there could be drawbacks that I don't know about yet. But so far, it seems like an excellent, smaller alternative to the Rode Videomic Pro Plus, and I'm very excited to use it more. Anyways, I hope this video has been helpful. If you want to check out any of these microphones, you can check out the affiliate links linked below. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a good one.